Everybody having a good week so far? Everybody ready for the rain tomorrow?
Snow.
Huh?
Rain?
Yeah.
It's like 100% chance. I can handle that rain.
Well, yesterday, northern Iowa was supposed to be getting snow, which is, everybody knows. And this morning, they moved it south a little bit. And then earlier, I just saw they moved the ice closer to us. So,
So to us or to you?
closer to you guys than me, since you're farther north. Yeah, it's more north. It's more of the western state, part of the state of Iowa, but it's working its way this way. So it could change.
When's it supposed to start though?
Tonight.
Oh.
Yeah, but I don't think the ice or anything is supposed to happen until tomorrow night. So, because it's going to be warm. It's supposed to be raining first, and then it'll start freezing.
Change over and make everything awesome.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
So we can go roller skating and ice skating?
Yes.
Yes.
All on the same day. Don't even have to wear roller skates, just you get in your car.
It's a parking lot.
And usually the first ice storm we have a lot of wrecks, so probably be busy tomorrow. Next day, if we even have it. So, all right, well, anyways, you guys study up on what we talked about on Sunday? Sure. Can a person ever lie? We're talking about lying. So, can a person ever lie deliberately? Yes. From what we see in the New Testament, what were two of the examples that we looked at? Rahab. And so Rahab made a choice to lie to save life, to save the two spies. And with that, was she blessed by God? She was, even to the point where she ended up in the lineage of Christ. And so we see that example, and then also what's another example we looked at? Yeah, Hebrew midwives. They blatantly lied to Pharaoh about what happened and what was going on with the children, the male children, and God blessed them for that and took care of them. And so we have two examples in the Bible that we see lying was okay, only in the case of what? Death. Yeah, someone's life, saving a life. And so what that does is it kind of shows to us that there can be moral conflicts, and we may be put into a moral conflict. And in that sense, hopefully we are never put in that situation where we have to choose to lie or choose to save someone's life. But we might be put in moral conflicts or two, let me say it this way, two rules or laws that collide in a situation. And we see that, do it.
I was trying to think of, when Herod told the wise men to go and let them know when Christ was born, but I never could find a passage that actually said that, I don't think the wise men ever came back to Herod.
No, because God told them not to.
Right, so I was like, in that instance, I was trying to figure out if, I had to think if they actually came back to Herod or not and lied, but they didn't. They actually, I was looking at the passages.
Yeah. I mean, we have other examples of lying in the Bible that it was not a good thing. We talked about Abraham. Now, there was no consequence. There was nothing stated about that being wrong, even to the fact of, with Abraham, God told Abimelech to go to Abraham and have him pray for him for his evilness or what he had done. And so, I don't understand exactly why we are not told why that wasn't good that Abraham did that. We definitely see later that Isaac did the same exact thing. He wasn't rebuked for that either.
And then his kids did.
Yeah. And then, his kids did with him, with Joseph. And which we see the consequences of that. But we also see the consequences of each one of these examples where they lied. Another example would be Ananias and Sapphira. They lied, and their consequence was death. But there are times where two principles, two morals will conflict, and a decision has to be made. And so these two are in line with what we're talking about with lying, but there is also other ones. You think about just someone. This, like I said, some of this is from my study, and I put this all in here. So. Just because I was looking at different comparisons of things that happen in the Bible. One of them is, Exodus 20 and verse 13, they're told not to kill. But God tells them to go in and completely annihilate cities in the Old Testament. There they're commanded by God to go in and destroy these nations. Then you have the command to not kill. What were they supposed to do in that situation? Well, you think about that situation. Those nations that God was destroying, what were they? Very sinful, evil nations that God said they were going, that was a consequence of their decision. And so there's kind of a comparison there. Now, the question would be, what about today? Someone that's in the military. We're not supposed to kill, but yet somebody can go in the military and might have to. But you also have, Romans 14 with the government, obeying the government. Another one would be, what about Samson? What did Samson do? Was there a moral conflict there? What did he do at the end of his life? Yeah. And so we would say, well, he committed suicide to kill the Philistines, which God told him to destroy in the first place. And some would say, well, that wasn't good what he did, but his hair grew back and he got his power back, right? God gave him his power back in that situation. And so, some would say, well, is that really, is that suicide? I don't think it is. I think there's another, Holly said another word for it. I can't remember what it was. So good, I told her I was going to write it down, I forgot. See how it goes? Because we were talking about this. But there's two different things there, and yet Samson was not rebuked for what he did. And God even gave him his power back. You can look at the cross. Proverbs 6 and verse 17. Somebody read that.
A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood.
Okay, so what does God hate?
Hands that shed innocent blood.
Hands that shed innocent blood. So God does not like the shedding of innocent blood, yet Christ went to the cross as innocent, right? Because he had to. There was no other way. God even planned it that way, that he would. Because that was the way that God, he knew there had to be a perfect sacrifice. And even though Christ was innocent, 1 Peter 2:24. And so there's something there to think about. One of them that I've always struggled with, trying to figure out and what in the world was going on there and why Jesus commended this. But go to Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12. Let's read from verse 1 through 4.
That time Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples were hungry and began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, he and those who were with him? How he entered the house of God and ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests?"
All right, so this example comes from the Old Testament. David was hungry. He was running from Saul, and his men were hungry, and he came to the temple, or not the temple, it'd be the tabernacle, but he's using the word temple here. And he went inside the tabernacle and took the showbread that was there and fed it to his men. Jesus used this as an example of why he did what he did on the Sabbath. Now, the Pharisees had made rules that were beyond what God had made. And so they were to the point where Jesus was just plucking some grain and eating it. To them was work, and he shouldn't do that. Well, Jesus, in the grand scheme of things, and you go down to verse 9, he says, "For the Son of God, Son of the Lord, is the Lord of the Sabbath." He's the one that created the Sabbath. And so, the laws, in a sense, do not apply to him. But what he's referring here to is that account of David. Now, who was allowed to go into the temple? Only the priests. Was David a priest? No, he was of the tribe of Judah. Only the tribe of Aaron, or the Levite tribe, was able to go into the temple. David was not struck dead by going into the temple and taking that showbread and feeding it to his men. And Jesus even uses that example here, in a sense, approves of what David did and shows that it was fine of what he did. I always struggle with that because you have like Hezekiah. Hezekiah thought he would go into the temple and offer incense. And when he first minute he stepped into that temple, he was struck with leprosy. And the rest of his life he had leprosy. So I think about that and go, well, you're not allowed to go in there. But yet David was allowed to go in there and not die for it, or not get punished for it. Well, the only reason is because what was he trying to do? Take care of his men. And so the law there. So you have two different examples. So these are some examples where two things conflict and what the outcome was from that. We're not going to go through all of this, but you can know the next part. And some of this is just for your notes, for you to study also. But the Bible talks about some laws that are higher than others. You think about the greatest command, Matthew 23. You think about, Jesus talks about some of the weightier matters of the law, and talking about Luke 14, he talks about the violating the Sabbath to save an ox when he was healing a man's hand. You think about this. Would a person be condemned if, let's say, they were on the way to worship? We're commanded to worship on Sunday, right? We're on the way to worship, and there's somebody laying on the side of the road dying. And we stopped to help them, and we missed services. Is God going to condemn us for that? No. Because what are we doing? Yeah.
Don't lie to them that they're going to be okay.
Yeah, don't lie to them that they're going to be okay. That's right.
You're going to die, I'm sorry.
You're going to die, but I'm going to stay here with you.
I'm going to be here with you.
I'm going to be here the whole time.
Just till you go, and you're on your own.
Not the whole time.
Yeah.
I'll push you off the road and we'll leave.
I'll call someone then.
There's things like that. We have the responsibility, principle to care and take care of somebody and help someone, but yet we also have the command that we're supposed to worship on Sunday. But
there's no time.
Yeah,
So
that's
this
true.
week
There is
you
no
miss
time.
Mass or whatever, or worship,
Yeah,
there's still time.
yeah, because it's on
There's
Sunday.
no set time to have to do it.
Yep, that's right. And so, but that's, just using that as an example, there's sometimes you could be in a conflict like that and what you choose to do, and we would see that saving that life is important. Jesus even faced some moral conflicts in a sense. You think about Luke chapter 2. I'm not going to spend a lot more time on this, but I encourage you to read some of these and think about this. Luke chapter 2, 41 through 52. Where was Jesus found when he was 12 years old?
In the temple.
Okay. Should he have been with his parents?
Technically.
Technically, yes. And they went back to look for him. They were worried and upset that he was not there. And then what did he say? Should be about my Father's business. And so there's that example. You have many times where Jesus healed on the Sabbath, and people were upset with him about that. And so kind of concluding all this, there is times where a choice has to be made, and specifically focused on what we're talking about with lying. Yes, God hates lying. We see many examples in the Bible where lying is wrong, lying is sinful. We're told that all liars will go to hell, Revelation 21 and verse 8. And that's, we talked about that, habitual liars. But yet, we see that there is times where lying could be, only one occasion, where lying could be fine, and that is to save a life. This is the only, quote, quote, approved example we find in Scriptures. Anything outside that is sinful. I don't see any other example of it being in a good way. It's only in this case of saving a life. So we kind of got into some Christian ethics there, talking about this. Geisler's book has a lot of information on this. I've been studying it and studying a lot of different passages that I've thought about and piecing this together. But that's the only way to explain those two examples we find. If you go down this reasoning also, then you could go to Jephthah's vow and say that he did offer his daughter as a sacrifice. That's a tough one still for me, but it could be, possibly. So any questions on that before we move on? Talking about lying. Nothing? All right, let's move on to the next paragraph in our book. So we're changing subjects in the same lesson. We're going to talk about stealing now. Somebody want to read a paragraph, was it 4?
How many of you have ever stolen anything? Fear of robbers and thieves causes us to lock our doors and bar our windows. However, not all thieves steal big things. Some young people steal from their employers by lying about hours worked or stealing small amounts of cash from the cash register. Whatever the amount, stealing is wrong. In Ephesians 5:28, let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. Okay.
I don't have a lot on this because we understand stealing is wrong. I don't think anybody here has a problem with answering that is sinful. But we do read Ephesians 5:28, which is an important principle there, which we read that just in the book, but somebody else, you want to read it again, please? Ephesians 5:28.
So ought men to love.
It is right.
Yep. Oh, is it? Okay. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself.
No, that's not the right verse. So the book was wrong on that. I know that this verse is familiar. Let's see.
It's 400.
Let him that stole steal no more,
There you go.
but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth.
Okay, so as we talk about other principles we see, we talk about the responsibilities of let a man, if man does not work, neither shall he eat, right? The principle there that we should not steal. Now, most of the time we think about stealing in the sense of stealing goods, stealing something from somebody. But stealing can also be in other ways. What are some other ways a person could steal?
Stealing time from your employer.
Okay, that's a big one. It is. Stealing time from our employer. And, there's people that lie about their time or just not working at all. You think about, time clocks. I've never clerked in a place that had time clock, but I've heard of places that had them. Yeah, grocery store. They'll call in and say, hey, clock me in, but they're not even there on that point. And so we got to be careful because stealing can be also in our time for our employer. And so Debbie, you got something? Okay. What anything else? What are some other ways stealing can be done?
Okay, I had a boss one time, and he was a real jerk. But, he was a real stinker about, you can't make a copy, it has to be work related, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one night I happened to be working late, and he'd already gone home, and I walked into where the copier was, and there was about 700 pages of a letter that he'd written for his church on the copy machine. And I just went, oh, okay, don't make a copy that's not work related. And this 750-page letter going out to your congregation, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what an idiot.
Yeah.
I wanted to take him and lay him on his desk and say, here, you left this on the copier, but I wasn't his favorite person, so I probably would have.
Yeah. People would say, well, you go to the point where if I take a pen from work, then I'm stealing. Well, I don't know how many pens I ended up from work at home.
I know. They don't even realize it.
No.
I mean, it's not intentional.
Yeah, and in some jobs, things, allowed to make copies, things like that. But we just got to be conscious of what we're doing, and especially of our time. And I've not always been the best at that, in the past with my time. And so we got to think about that. Dave?
Well, I just look at it as if you're doing it intentional. I mean, there's times that you do things that it just slips your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like that is quite a big deal as if you are doing it with an intent.
Yeah. Yep. And so, thinking about stealing, I don't know what other ways that a person could steal. I was thinking about this the other day. I heard on the radio. I don't know if anybody else heard this, but Shaq went and bought all of the Snickers from a gas station the other day. It was made the news. Bought every single Snickers that was there and told them to give them to kids that came in. And the reason for that is because when he was a kid, he went in there and stole Snickers all the time. And so, but they put this on the news like it was a big ordeal, it's like, so how amazing it was for him to go and do this for kids and stuff. And it's like, you admitted on the radio, or admitted that you stole so many of these Snickers when you were a kid. So, yeah, I mean, he was a kid when he did it.
Just now can afford to do.
I guess just now can afford to do it.
Statute of limitations is run out.
So I guess he felt bad.
Snicker bar.
Snicker bar. So he felt bad enough that he went back and tried to give the money back, I guess. But I guess he should have gave money and not bought the Snickers. But anyways, think about it. You think about Ephesians 4 and verse 28. Let him that stole, steal no more. We need to be honest with our work and work for the things that we have.
There's another way. With the internet now, it used to be people start rumors, but now it's the internet, and they can start tear down a person's good reputation, either in their business or personally, by going on the internet and saying bad things about them or about their business. Tom and Jane run an apartment building, and they've got several buildings, and people will go on the internet if they get mad about something and put bad things on the internet about them. And they have to go in and take them down.
Yeah.
So they see a lot of people doing that to a lot of businesses up there. And Cedar Rapids is really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens a lot, unfortunately. And so we see that stealing is an issue, and we all understand that. But sometimes we don't think about where areas we could be stealing in. And so it's good to think about. Somebody read the next paragraph, please.
Another form of dishonesty common to students is cheating on tests and homework. Cheating is so common in some places, you notice how I took this paragraph?
Mm-hmm.
Many people accept it as okay, as long as you do not get caught. The story is told of a teacher who said, whenever he gave an exam, today I give you 2 tests. One is from your book, the other test is honesty. If you must fail one, fail the exam from your book. For For the Christian young person, it will take great commitment to stand up for honesty. Resolve now, before the next temptation comes, to be honest in all things. You will not regret your decision later. Though being honest may have some immediate negative consequences, a bad grade, a loss of friend, etc., you will be able to respect yourself and you will gain the respect of others.
All right, so looking at cheating, we talked about this a little bit in introduction, but unfortunately, cheating happens a lot in schools. Like I said, it happens in, even in Memphis, unfortunately, at times. And they deal with it, thankfully. But unfortunately, it happens, even in places you'd think it would happen. As we were reading this, I was thinking about talking about dishonesty. When we were in school, we had several tests that we took. One of the question was, did you read the required material?
Man.
And that's 5 points. So you got 100%, you're gonna get a 95 if you do not mark that. It's very tempting to just mark, yes, I read it. There's times I couldn't mark that because you had so much reading going on. And so you lose 5 points, but it's on that honesty thing. You're honestly, and they're trusting that, God is your witness and what you're doing, you did it or not. And that's a tough one because it's easy to just go, yeah, I did.
Of course I did.
And who's going to know? You and God.
Yeah.
And so I remember Caleb's talked about Elkins, or Brother Cates, not Elkins, but he taught Job down there. And he had a time where he came in, he gave his test. They said they talked about how his test Job couldn't even pass because they were so hard. But he had a test on Job, and he had several guys almost get 100%, pretty much 100% on the test. He's like, all right.
Change the test.
Yep. He's like, somebody cheated. Well, come to find out, somebody had posted the test, and they'd all studied the test beforehand. And so he went and wrote another test, like 10, 15 minutes, came back in and gave it to them. And then they didn't pass. So, that's, unfortunately that happens. But cheating is, when we talked about in the introduction, even taking papers that somebody else has written and putting your name on them, things like that. And, a lot of us aren't dealing with that today, but teenagers do. I mean, teachers do all the time, I'm sure.
Apple Watches are a thing of cheating.
Yeah.
They can write anywhere on their arms or clothes even, they don't care. It's really tempting for students to cheat.
Yeah, it is. Especially when you're trying to get really good grades for scholarships or something, it's easy to.
It's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
because of it.
But honest work, at the end of the day, somebody truly put the work in, they're going to feel better about what they did than if they cheated, for sure.
C plus.
Huh?
C
plus. Or just be happy with that. Yeah, that's fine.
It has.
Oklahoma A is what, a 70?
70. Been down that road.
Yep. All right, let's read the last paragraph, somebody, please.
If you are dishonest now, it will be easy for you to be dishonest later. If you lie to your parents now, you will probably lie to your boss later. If you cheat on your homework now, it won't bother your conscience to cheat on your taxes later. However, if you are honest now, you will build a foundation for honest living later. Whatever a person sows, that he will reap. Galatians 6, 7, and 8. The world needs honest people. Will you take the stand?
All right, so this is important. Once a person starts to learn to lie, it makes it easier and easier as time goes on to lie more. And so, especially our teenagers, teaching them to be honest at a young age will help them as they get older. There's so many people that are lying today. Think about, you can't trust anything a politician says because they just lie to get ahead. Hopefully there's some honest ones out there. I hope there is. And there might be. There probably is. But it's hard to distinguish between those that are lying and those that are not. And this one brought up the taxes. A lot of people cheat on their taxes, lie on their taxes. And so we got to be careful about that too. So whatever a person sows, that he will reap. That's Galatians 6, 7, and 8. A person that lies or is dishonest in any way, cheating, stealing, whatever the case may be, lying, they may not see consequences now. But if they do not repent of that, someday they will. And so we got to teach our children to be honest. We need honest people in our society so much. So, any questions or comments on this? Well, everybody do their homework. Sunday morning we will do the questions. All right, thank you guys for your time. Kathy's probably already got it done. She's probably listening.